Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jessica Chastain.
Hello, everybody.
Jessica, you might want to know that most of the front row are Juilliard students.
Yay!
Jessica, you are right at ground zero of where you studied.
Yes, right across the street, only minus the plaza archway, bridgeway.
That's true. That's true. What? Let's go back to that moment in your life. Clearly, an important turning point for you. What was it like for you studying at Juilliard? What first made you come to Juilliard? It's a big decision. And what was your experience?
Well, it wasn't a big decision to decide to go to Juilliard. I mean, it was more of their decision to accept me.
Yeah.
I think it's the best training program in the world. I know I'm a little biased. I still wear my Juilliard ball cap. But it's such an incredible school, and the training is just phenomenal. I think unmatched. It changed my life completely. Before I got accepted to Juilliard and moved here, I had never seen a foreign film. I had never been exposed to the arts the way I had, being in New York, living in Lincoln Center, going to the Lincoln Plaza Cinema across the street every free chance I got. And the training is, the classics, learning Strindberg and Chekhov and Ibsen, Shakespeare. It's fantastic. It prepares you for anything. In fact, I'm about to go film Miss Julie, the film version of that. So it's kind of great. I can go from a film Zero Dark 30 or The Help or Mama, a fantasy horror film, then to Strindberg. I mean, Juilliard's giving me the training. We'll see if I succeed at it, but I have the training.
There's something about Juilliard that makes it special, that seems to yield an extraordinary level of talent. The actors who've come out of this training. And is it that combination of rep, of the classics, of all of that combination, the commitment, the single focus commitment on acting, that's the key, you think? And was that crucial for you in your development as an actor?
Yes, it gave me a toolbox that I can pull from. Every part I play, I don't necessarily approach it the same way. Most of the time I do, because I found a technique that I think really works for me, that I've scraped together from all the training that I received. But sometimes if I get stuck, I can just think back to classes that I had where, John Sticks, we had a class where we all went to the zoo and found an animal and studied the animal and then brought in the animal as a person and what does that energy do to the body. Even things like that, or looking at a painting. That actually, I learned that at Juilliard, going into the museum and studying paintings and then bringing the paintings to life. And I used that for Tree of Life with the Madonnas, Raphael's Madonnas. The idea of studying the energies of the women and bringing it. And all that comes from Juilliard.
What was your animal?
A tiger. Yes. Something about the neck being really low, Yeah, you can find really interesting character choices through animals.
That's fascinating. I'm trying to imagine the exercise that you did in the class afterwards, and that sense of play too. I think that suggests that too. Working outside of the text and the sense of play. It's a quality that runs through, I think, all of your performances, that there's a sheer pleasure, I think, that the audience gets from you that is that makes the performances special. And you've talked about that before. You have an uncommon, it seems to me, pleasure in acting, that it goes way beyond work.
I feel like a fish that when I'm acting, I'm in water. You know, there's something about it, like I breathe it. Not in my real life. I'm a very kind of normal, stable, undramatic person in my real life, my personal life. But there is, for me, acting is a way of feeling part of something bigger than myself. For me, it's like it feels spiritual because, you know, there's a saying, you never judge a person until you walk a mile in their shoes. Acting gives me the opportunity to actually walk in other people's shoes, to try to understand their motivations and their way of being, and to learn about women who are so different than myself. And being involved, being so lucky to be in a career where I get to learn about us as a people and as a community, I mean, makes me feel like I keep saying part of something bigger than me. It's I think a beautiful way to connect to people. So I think maybe when you say you see the joy in it, you're seeing the joy that I have in people and in the intimacies that are shared.
Part of that pleasure that you have in your work you've talked about is the research. There are some actors who are almost fanatical about their research, and I don't know if you'd classify yourself as fanatical about research, but you are really into it. And one of the roles that I'm really struck by that in which required particularly difficult, I would think, emotionally difficult research was For the Debt, in which you play Rachel, and it's really the young Rachel because the film is set in two different time periods. Hers in Berlin, 1965, and you had to do research on Joseph Mengele, which is about one of the most unpleasant topics I can think of to delve into for research. That must have been a kind of a tough assignment, but we have a clip that will lead into this to give a sense of the intensity of the role. What was the preparation for that role like?
Yeah, it was very depressing. I had about 4 months before we started shooting. There was so much to learn for Rachel because a lot of my scenes are in German, and I'd never spoken the language, so I thought, okay, that's a big thing for me to do. And it's okay because she has an accent, and they even talk about her German as accented, so it's like, okay, it doesn't have to be fluent. But I took a German course at Berlitz just to understand the grammar of the language. Then I had my own coach who coached me with my lines, who contacted a German school in Buenos Aires to get the correct way that the line would be accented. And then I had to do a lot of research about survivors of the Holocaust, and in particular, the medical experiments during the Holocaust. And that was really, really dark, depressing. It had me questioning so much about us as a people, the more stories I read. And in fact, I was doing it over Christmas, and I came home for Christmas, and my mom was like, "What is going on with you?" Because she said I just had this dark cloud over myself. I spent every day reading stories and finding Rachel Singer's backstory. When you put your attention on something like that, it can't help but affect your mood. I mean, I'm struggling that even a little bit now with the Heiress, because I've been doing it for 5 months, and every day for 5 months I have to have a full-on breakdown and cry and say no one loves me, and all these things. And I wonder if something happens in your brain because, they talk about laughing therapy, about how if you're depressed, you're supposed to laugh, and something happens that changes you. I wonder what happens. Something must be happening if you're crying every day. I can feel the sadness of it. And it's a very different experience than playing someone like Celia Foote, who is so hello, it's all love and open and joy. But I think it has to be personal. That's our job as actors, is we have to give all of what we are to it.
Well, we'll now look at a clip from The Debt, and we'll see Rachel getting some comeuppance on the evil Nazi doctor at the heart of The Debt. What do you think of when you look back and see a clip like that? It's been a kind of a period of time now. You've made, I don't know, 200 movies since then.
Do you know that's one of my favorite things I've ever filmed, sticking that needle in his neck. We filmed in the film. There's 3 doctors visit. She has to pose as a patient to take pictures of him to see if he is the surgeon of Birkenau that they're looking for. And we filmed them in chronological order, and so I basically spent a week on that table on my back, like Jesper's an amazing actor. He's so sweet, so kind, but like after a while you're like, okay, you just feel humiliated all the time, because the whole conversation, it's as though he's doing an examination on her. That when I finally, and it's all in German, it was really intense. When I finally got to do this scene, the very first take, I grabbed him and I stuck, it's of course a fake needle, but I stuck it in his neck, and he stopped the scene. He's like, Jessica, that really hurts. Like that. Because I would realize it was like this pent up aggression for a week of Rachel not being able to do anything about it. That's using the frustration of the actor waiting around to get your. What's interesting is that really from the beginning of your film career, from Jolene on, it's so striking how each role you've taken on is so completely different from the previous one. It's not that so much that there's roles you can trace, there's certain classical roles, or there's certain, you might call poetic roles, like in Tree of Life, we can spot those. But it seems like each time you go in a different direction. If you went right this time, you went left next time. Is that a plan on your part, or is that a product of just accident and coincidence with opportunities that come? Yeah. Well, I think it's always been part of a plan, because even in the beginning when I first started auditioning for films, I made sure that I fought really strong for films and characters that I hadn't played before. I was given a great gift. It was like curse and a gift at the same time. My first film still has not come out yet, Salome. And Al Pacino directed it, and he was my co-star. I thought, this is my big break, and hopefully it'll come out soon.
You said that last year.
I know, I keep saying it every year. From there, because I was making films, Tree of Life and such, Tree of Life took 3 years in the editing room. Directors didn't have past performances that they typed me from. So I made it a goal of mine that every time I got a script, I would only be interested in the parts that were something I'd never done before. I think that goes back to I like playing women that are different than me because I like to learn about women that are different than me. And I find especially women in this industry are typecast immediately. Meant that I had to fight really, really hard for those in those years, that even though it'd be like my 5th film, I'd have to like knock the door down to get an audition because no one had seen any of my work. But then, 2011 happened, and it was like my reel. It was like 7 films that all came out at once. So I think, I have planned it a bit. But when I was a student at Juilliard, Val Kilmer came, who's an alumni of this school. And I remember the talk he gave, and he said, Hollywood isn't unimaginative, it's anti-imagination. And that really, because that's like aggressively saying you can't do it. And so I really remembered that. And when Tree of Life came out and Take Shelter, they came out, those were the first things that were seen. It was at Cannes. It was like a big, moment. It was like the beginning of my career. Immediately, all the scripts I was getting were supportive wives. And even though those women were very different in those movies, they were the supportive wife. And I realized I've just been typecast. It's the first time in my career now. So immediately after, the next project I took was Mama in the Guillermo del Toro film, where I got to play a girl who's going to community college, likes to play with her band, and she plays in a punk band. She'll never be famous. She's not very good at it. She's kind of a slacker, and she hates kids. And I thought, well, that's the opposite of Tree of Life. I'm not only am I playing such a different character, I'm going from Terrence Malick to a genre film. I'm not. It's less about a career strategy and more about, oh, I see what you're doing. You're telling me I can't do that. Well, I'm gonna you're trying to, I'm gonna fight you. I definitely have a fighting spirit. So if someone tries to put me in a box, I will break my way out of it.
In fact, you talked about how when you had these meetings early on in Hollywood, there would be strategy meetings, and that you said that wasn't for you. That the strategies that were being set out for you were not the right fit for you. You knew that.
Yeah. If someone calls me, if a representation calls me and says this will be really good for your career, or this will be a nice paycheck for you, that's a guarantee I'm not going to do the film. It's like and I think they've since learned not to open with that conversation, right. Because I've never approached this business by way of money or fame. There would have been much faster ways to become, famous or to make money. You don't, do Salome for I don't want to say what I got, but hardly got anything, to make a lot of money. I just mostly go for, okay, what's the part I haven't done? Then it's challenge to me. If I feel like I'm being challenged, hopefully I'll rise to the occasion. If I'm not being challenged, then I'm just not going to be good in it because I'm going to be bored, and the audience will see that I'm bored, and we've already seen me play this role, and so there won't be anything exciting about it.
I think an astonishing performance, we can call it now early performance, of yours, was opposite Michael Shannon under Jeff Nichols' direction, Take Shelter. Yes, and applause is deserved for that.
Michael Shannon in that movie, man.
Incredible. But you're both incredible, and you both need each other. Talk about this for a moment. The dependency that one actor has for another to make a scene work, that really comes through powerfully in scene after scene in Take Shelter.
Well, Take Shelter for me, it's interesting. Take Shelter is actually, in one way, similar to Zero Dark 30, because these are women Now, Samantha in Take Shelter is more emotional, but these are women who don't necessarily speak their subtext. And so much of what's happening for them is happening off of the lines. So that means when you have a character like that, so much is about the prep you do before you arrive on set. And when I first talked to Jeff Nichols about this film, he said the film's not a movie about, it's not about schizophrenia, and it's not about the end of the world. It's about faith and marriage. And when he said that, that opened everything for me. And when you look at each scene from the movie, Samantha's subtext is, why are you being so weird? You know? And every single scene, she's looking at him like, what's wrong with you? So I have to figure out how to play the levels of that. And we're not shooting in order, so that all has to be carefully graphed before I arrive on set. Of course, when you're on set with Mike Shannon, you leave everything open to what's happening in the moment, as it is, because he's the kind of actor that, you know, he demands that you be present because he's so good that you want to just take everything in he's doing. But we would have scenes where, I mean, it was all about creating the dynamic of this family. When we didn't have trailers on the set, I think we each made $100 a day on that film. We did 4 6-day weeks of shooting. And whenever we had no money for this film, whenever they'd be kind of getting a scene together, Mike and Tova, who's the girl who plays our daughter, and I would hang out, and we would like color or, you know, have a picnic outside. We were always just kind of hanging out together, and I think that really filled in the lines of the family.
Well, with a big idea like faith, you then have a big idea like playing Grace in Tree of Life. Good Lord, what is the nature of the assignment there where you're asked to play Grace, the state of grace?
Yeah, that's kind of impossible when you think that way. I auditioned for many months before I ever read the script, and all I knew about the character she was as though she was from another time, and there was something and she was full of grace, and you know, not submissive, but not aggressive. You know, she didn't really have direct eye contact. There was something very sweet and docile about her. And so during the auditions, we would work on stuff like that and talk about grief and the idea of losing a son. And then once I got the role, Terrence Malick called me up to tell me I got in the part. And I was like, great, I'm so excited, and not knowing what I was going to play. And he goes, well, let me send you the script. And I was like, you don't, trust me, I'll do it. Like, we don't need to talk about it. He goes, let me send you the script. It took me 4 hours to read it because the script is very close to what the movie is. And there's 20 pages or more of, like, the whole creation. And, like, you know, you have to have your dictionary out, every other word. And when I was reading it, I was really struck by the idea of, oh, my goodness, the mother, she's more than just the epitome of grace. It's like if there's such a thing as grace in nature, she's like the representation of the whole spiritual world. And I thought, well, I can't play that as an idea. I don't know how to ground that in a performance. And the only thing that I could really, that like was my kickstart to open, how do I make her a real woman, was seeing, oh, this is a woman that's life is also defined through her children. So much is about the children, and the love that she has is because of them, which is why when she loses one of them, her whole idea of God and grace is questioned, because for her, grace is her children. So that's how I started that. But then there were a lot of other things. I had months of rehearsal before. I studied paintings of the Madonna in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I watched old Lauren Bacall films to study her way of speaking. You know, there's something, and Terrence Malick actually suggested it, and he was so right. He goes, Jessica, back then, people spoke slowly and directly, but nowadays we're all afraid we're going to get cut off, so we like rattle on. But there's something very even and direct about that tone that he wanted for the film. And I created an entire biography for the character, because the things when I'm playing a character, if it's not in the script, I still have to create it outside. So even though my character didn't have a name, I named her. I had all these things, so she was a real woman to me.
Do you often do that? Will you write the bios of the characters independent of the filmmaker, director, collaborator you're working with?
Yeah, and I always do that. I need to know what their favorite food is, what their favorite music to dance to is. When they feel lonely, who do they think about? Sometimes I let the director in on it, sometimes I don't, because it's a secret. And I've started to, the more I've worked, the more I've started to take ownership of my characters. And as long as it doesn't, go a huge difference from what the script is, because the script for me is the spine of the character. At the end of the day, I feel like I know more about the woman I'm playing than even the writer. There's some, I have to give myself permission to claim her. Otherwise, I don't believe she's real.
It's a kind of a way of authorship of the character itself, would you say?
Absolutely. Like with Maya, now in Zero Dark 30, she's a real woman. And I had the great fortune of working for 3 months to study, as much as I could about her. But I had to fill in all these personal lines that I couldn't find out about her. But I had to fill them with information that to me followed the research. It wasn't like, okay, I'm playing Jessica. Let me fill in my own personal tastes as Maya. I can't do that. I've got to okay, what happens if you're the smartest kid in the room when you're 6 years old? What does that do to your upbringing and friends, and how does that change your life? So all of that happens. I mean, Celia Foote, I read the book 5 times. I underlined everything they ever said about Celia, and from there worked to create her bio.
We have upcoming a clip speaking of the wonderful, bubbly Celia, unclassifiable force of nature. She's sort of a character that Shaw would call embody the life force, I think. And here we have a clip, and it's a lovely one, where you're playing opposite Octavia Spencer. Both of you were, of course, nominated for the Oscar for supporting actress. And we'll talk a little bit about Celia after we see the clip. Talk about pleasure. That role is such a joy to behold, and again, yet hits other notes that you hadn't had a chance to play before. What was that experience like? Such a totally different role.
Yeah, it's interesting because, in college I did comedy. I played Smeraldina in The King's Stag, and I had a lot of fun doing that. But then something I mean, it's here goes the typecasting again. Something happens when they see, oh, she can cry. Oh, she plays the victim really well. Oh, we'll put her in many of those things. And so the main thing that I was really kind of like, oh, I don't know about this, was the whole bombshell factor of Celia Foote. But the more I thought about her, I thought, like, all these, like, incredibly beautiful women don't know that they're beautiful. Especially someone like, I was trying to figure out, well, why is she so loving? Why is she so open? And, you know, in the book it said she came from Sugar-Ditch, which that was the poorest area, my research, the poorest area of the United States, Tunica County. And it was called Sugar-Ditch because it was an open ditch filled with sewage. And it was predominantly, and I found this out, it wasn't in the book, I found this out from my research. At the time, it was predominantly African American, which meant she would have grown up, she would have been an outsider. And she would have basically saw no difference. She'd be completely colorblind. And that was a huge, like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Why she's so, like, why can't we eat together? Why can't we sit together? And then also for me, I just loved the idea of the love story between these women. You know, so many times someone talks about your chemistry with male actors, and no one really talks about, like, the love between women and friendship and how they can save each other's lives. And when I met Octavia at the audition, like, I wanted to play Celia Foote before because I'd never played the character. But the second I met her, I just thought, okay, I have to work with you because there's something special that's happening in these scenes. There's something about her delivery. She had like a groundedness where I had an airiness that I found the energies really exciting to be together.
Yeah, that's again another terrific example of playing opposite another actor, that where you're feeding each other. There's a dependency and interaction it's a joy to behold, and it's musical too. I'm curious in regards to all this, which role do you think is the most completely different from who you are, and perhaps the role that you felt is closest, if any of them are, to who you are?
That's impossible to answer, to be honest. You know, answering that question, I don't know if it's necessarily the easiest for me because I feel like every role is so different from me. Some roles are more fun than others. Tree of Life and The Help, most fun I've ever had in my life. Because when you think about Tree of Life, I got to spend 7 months doing meditations every day about opening my heart and cultivating grace and love in my life. And that can't beat that. I mean, and like playing with little kids who I love, and there was something so beautiful about that. And then also Celia Foote, you know, there's so much, even though she has her own sadness, so much about the characters, just everything's so open. The voice is open, the eyes, the face, the heart, the body, everything is just like, she's just this open person. And so it's fun to play characters that are like that. The least fun character I've ever played is Maya in Zero Dark 30, because and I have so much respect for her and admiration for her and love for her, but she's the opposite of openness. Everything about her is closed. And sometimes it's even difficult for me to watch the movie because I look so unhappy. Like, I look at my face in the movie and it's just like everything, the lines in my face, the stress, all I did was I wore her shoes for 4 months and pretended to be her and pretended to have other people's lives in my hands and to have my life. This was all fake. It was all make-believe. And it was miserable. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for the woman who spent 7 years of her life actually doing it.
Yeah, and with the role of Maya, you've got a single-minded individual. She's, as she says to the Leon Panetta character played by James Gandolfini at one point, it's the only job you've ever done. It's the only thing you've ever done. In a way, that strikes the viewer as, if you think about the role, as kind of the most difficult possible assignment for the actor, because a single-mindedness is almost, seems like one dimension, and yet you have to make it three-dimensional if it's going to be an interesting performance. Was that part of the challenge?
Yeah, yes, of course. But also part of the challenge is she's a character. The more, because, you know, I said this one I had to be fanatical about the research because it's a real woman. She's not a composite. This is based on very important historical events. There's a lot of responsibility with this film. A lot of the research was not very much fun to do. It's not like opening your heart space and meditating on love and, you know, all those things. It's a lot of difficult things. And the more research I did on the CIA, the more I realized that anyone in the CIA has been trained to be unemotional and analytically precise, especially if you're a woman. If you're an emotional woman in the CIA, you would never get to Islamabad. You would never get to you would have been screened out because you would have been a liability in the agency and no one would take you seriously. So for an actor who I spent my whole life training to be emotional and allowing myself to express how I feel, and, you know, there's something cathartic about acting because, you know, there's like this freedom in that. Then to put myself and go, okay, well, in order for me to play her as a professional, and she was very good at her job, I have to close off this part of myself. Doesn't mean I can't have the impulses of things that are difficult, like an interrogation or whatever. I can have that impulse because there's nothing wrong with it. Maya can have the impulse. But then what I have to do is I have to allow my professionalism to take over. And I have to now feel it but hide it. Which is why in the scenes, like with Kyle Chandler in the hallway, when Maya freaks out on him, I just thought, like, well, what happens if you're in a profession that's a highly stressful profession and you're not allowed to express how you feel? What happens when you finally do? You go crazy. Like, it comes out in an unnatural way. Right. And then Catherine and I talked about how the very last moment of the movie would be the very first time we see her vulnerable and exhale. And that was, so it was this performance had to be, with Mark Bowl and Catherine, had to be, you know, like Samantha, before I arrived, had to be really carefully arced out. And yeah, it was painful to play. And one day in the middle of a scene, we finished a take and I just started crying. And I've never done this before in a set, but I held up shooting for 10 minutes while I just went and cried. Because as an actor, it feels good to be emotional. It feels like also too, like something like kind of like, yeah, watch what I can do, you know? Like, you know, there's something about that. It just feels good. Just like you can show off, but it wasn't the story we were telling.
Well, now let's watch Jessica go crazy.
Is that where we're watching that clip?
Zero Dark Theater, that exact clip with opposite Kyle Chandler, who plays Joseph Bradley, her rather demanding, difficult boss in Islamabad in Zero Dark 30.
This guy never met Bin Laden. This guy's a freelancer working off the fucking internet. No one's even talked to Bin Laden in 4 years. He's out of the game. We know what he thinks he's dead. He might as well be fucking dead. But you know what you did? Those whole fucking network goes all around you.
You just want me to nail some low-level molopacadolus so you can check that box in your resume that says while you were in Pakistan, you got a real terrorist. But the truth is, you don't understand Pakistan, and you don't know Al-Qaeda. Either give me the team I need to follow this lead, or the other thing you're going to have on your resume is being the first station chief to be called before a congressional committee for subverting the efforts to capture or kill bin Laden. I need 4 Texans to pass them off to me. 4 Texans to pass them for what? Your sentence off, or send me back to DC and explain to the director what I would do.
Get out of the way. Wow. It's a special moment in the film. It's one of the few scenes in the film where your character does release. We see what's at the bottom, what's driving her. Can you recall specifically the scene in preparing for it, because you brought up reserves that you had to, as you described before, you had to cap those reserves for the rest of the performance.
Yeah. It's funny, even watching this, I'm good watching playback, and I'm good watching dailies and all that stuff on set. It actually helps me, and we didn't have time when making this movie. It was like very guerrilla style filmmaking. And when I first saw the movie, especially the scene, it's like, everything about my neck and my nose and my veins and my forehead. And there's so much about it that I've done nudity before, but it's more embarrassing for me to watch this because I see myself in a way that I've never seen myself. Does that make sense? Like there's some, like the watching that, and I think that's because of Catherine Bigelow, where she pushed me in the scene. The first couple takes, I went in there and I knew it, and I was like telling him what's what. And Catherine came over and she goes, let's unhinge her. Like this, really. And so then I would unhinge her and she kept going, more. So I got to a point, I just didn't know. It's like when you're panicking, you just don't know what you're doing anymore. And I watch it and I feel like I'm going to turn into the Hulk in the scene. But it was because of, Catherine Bigelow. I'm the kind of actor that I always prefer less. My favorite actor, I love Isabelle Huppert. I love leaning forward when I'm watching a performance. And I'm glad Catherine was like, no, it's okay. You can let's really make her go crazy. Because I think it's very important in this film to show so many things. Even the scene shows the stress of what the job is that these people do. The idea that this woman, didn't have anything in her personal life for 7 years. She, throughout the film, throughout the story, she just erases herself until at the end when he says, where do you want to go? It's, of course, the feeling of the accomplishment of achieving her mission. But then there's the shock of the question and realizing she doesn't know how to answer it. And she doesn't know who she is anymore. And she's become a stranger to herself. And so perhaps the reason why when I see the scenes like this and see the film, it's like, I did that. There's this, I can remember shooting other films. This one is tough for me to remember things. And perhaps it was because it was every day a panic of how are we going to get the day.
What's your favorite book?
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Your favorite film?
The Kid. Yeah, Charlie Chaplin.
Why?
Because it surprised me with when the orphan's taken away from him, how much I felt. It was like an unexpected agony, which I'm really interested in the idea of two opposing ideas working at the same time. And whenever you think of Chaplin, you think of the humor and the lightness. But like even the song he wrote, "Smile," it's like smile though your heart is breaking. It's basically saying like, be happy when your life is at its worst. And there's something about performers or films or themes that I love when they have more than one idea.
Maybe that's why Isabelle Huppert is your favorite actor, because she does
Yeah.
both of those at once.
Yeah, if you look at her performance in The Piano Teacher, it's like, that's the perfect example of like icy hot. You know, I mean, there's so much about like, she's so cold, but just like right there, she's blazing. I mean, I love the idea of two conflicting ideas within a character. Love the idea of Celia Foote. She's this blonde bombshell, but she's so awkward. I love, Maya. Everything in the description of the character talked about how youthful she appeared to be. Everyone calls her the girl. Everyone's, it said that she looked like a girl. She sounded like a girl, almost like you would dismiss her immediately from looking at her. They say, isn't she young for this stuff? It's a children's crusade, and then immediately afterwards someone says, Washington says she's a killer. I love those ideas in a character, because I find that we as human beings, it's not just black and white. We have many shades of gray in who we are.
Let's open up to questions from the audience. Yes.
Hi.
Amelie, I'm a directing student, and you're saying a lot about like you work with a lot of guys like as directors. I wonder how it was different experience to work with a woman as director. Like I just shot a film, and it's like it's very interesting for me how for an actress to work with a woman, not with men.
Wow, that's a good question. I've worked with two female directors. I worked with Amy Mann and Catherine Bigelow. My next film is directed by Lee Volman. So I get to work with another female director. I can tell you, working with Catherine Bigelow, I know this is bizarre because it doesn't make any sense, but you don't think of her as a woman. Of course she's a woman. But when you're on set, you think of her as a genius. Full stop. Like, you don't go, oh my gosh, she's such an incredible filmmaker and leader, and she's a woman, And it wasn't until after I saw Zero Dark 30 that I kind of was like, oh, Maya and Catherine Bigelow, huh? Because, and I think I was too close to it on set to realize the tie between the two of them. But they're both women working in fields dominated by men who are known first for their expert work, and they don't talk about the glass ceiling in their profession. Yes, of course, there's, it's very rare to be a female director in Hollywood, but Catherine Bigelow, instead of making speeches about the glass ceiling, takes that energy and makes expert work. Maya, in the scene with Bradley, instead of saying, you're sexist, you won't listen to me because I'm a woman, says, I need 3 texts in Rawalpindi. They don't use that energy on something that doesn't get them their goal. And I always believe that great work will rise to the top. I'm very supportive of everyone as filmmakers. But when I was in Cannes this year for Lawless, there was a big protest about there were no female directors in the festival. And I said, and because I'm very supportive of everyone, but I think it was a little shocking, I said, I think a film should be judged on the film and not the sex of the filmmaker. And that goes both ways. A film should not get into a festival because it was a female director. And a film should not be discriminated against because it was a female director. So I'm all about focusing on the work, and that's exactly what Catherine Bigelow is like. Thank you.
It's interesting to hear you mention 2011 before as a year that 7 of your films came out. And this year, you've got Zero Dark 30 and what you also mentioned as a genre picture. Wondering how those other movies play into what your chances are, what you feel your chances are to win an award. Do you feel like it's just based solely on that performance, do you feel like Academy voters can't help but look at your kind of range of work over the year or over your career?
I don't know. Because actually this year, I also played an Italian jaguar in Madagascar 3.
We didn't get into that role somehow.
We don't need to. I don't see it like as an end game for me. Like last year when I was nominated for the Oscar, I was sitting on the red carpet. Octavia was going to win, and I was very happy when she won. And I don't feel like I need this now, because I've been working for a very long time, and last year when I was nominated, I kept saying, well, this will never happen again. This is the best year of my career, and I'm just going to enjoy every minute of it. And then this year it happened again. So now I'm like, well, I don't know what my future, I guess I can't make judgments about what is going to happen in my future. But I do know I don't choose roles for career status or for awards. I choose them because I loved being a student, and I loved learning different techniques from different teachers and experiencing new things. And so I don't quite understand the politics of what something means. And I'm sorry, I'm not very good at answering that. I would hope that I'm going to say something I should not say. But, Marion Cotillard and Rustin Bone is incredible. It's one of my favorite performances of the year. Shailene Woodley in The Descendants last year was one of my favorite performances. She wasn't even nominated. So you have no idea what constitutes that. And if I spent my life trying to solve a puzzle that to me seems so random, I would be a very unhappy person.
Hi, my name's Ella. I'm from South Africa. I just wanted to know, as a drama student, fresh out of drama school, what would you say is the best practical advice you can give someone for an acting career, not a career not the fame and the celebrity and all that, just the acting?
I think the best advice, and I don't remember who gave it to me, I wish I had, because I live by it, is do the work when no one's watching. So many times we think we are victim to other people, so whether or not we get to work. Whether it be an audition, a casting director, a director, someone casting you, then it's like, oh, good, I get to be an actor. But this is something we decide on our own. We don't need to have someone else tell us we're an actor to be one. And I believe if you do something every day that reminds yourself you're an actor, even if you don't have a job, if you're, taking a movement class, if I was adapting Hamlet in Santa Monica to make it into a movie, if you're doing something every day that continues your training, at some point in your life, you're going to get lucky. Everyone gets lucky. But I believe you have to be prepared when it finds you. And the only way to be prepared is to continue to have worked on your own. You're welcome. Hello?
Have equal opportunity on this side. We have one mic.
Hi.
Hi.
This is less of an acting question, but I'm really curious about it. Did you meet this woman who's called Maya in the film, and what have been her fortunes in the CIA?
I did not meet Maya. She's an undercover CIA agent. However, I can tell you, I've had to keep tape over my mouth about certain things. And the other day I was I was on the Tonight Show, and they had me writing on the window, 1 minute or whatever. And the writer just told me, you can say that really happened. I'm like, I can? Like, slowly things are starting to come out. Like, little things that you imagine were just written for Hollywood, it's true. Like, she wrote the number of days on the wall of her, or in the window of her superior. I've learned more about Maya from the press since the movie came out than anything else. I mean, there was an amazing article in the Washington Post. I don't know if it's true, but the journalist contacted some of her colleagues and said that she was passed over for promotion because she doesn't know how to make a lot of friends in the CIA. It said that that she was given a Distinguished Intelligence Award for finding bin Laden, but other people were also given lesser awards. And being the woman that Maya is, she hit the reply all button on the email and said, "You all obstructed me. You stood in my way. Only I deserve this award." And so she would. But her colleagues have said, if you can't get a promotion for finding bin Laden in the CIA, I don't know what gets you promotion. But it's funny, the more information we're finding out that's coming out about her, and it's very important that not too much information comes out about her because she won't be able to do her job otherwise. But the more we're realizing that Mark Bull, our screenwriter, is a very good investigative journalist. It even connects to No Easy Day, the book the Navy SEAL wrote, where he describes Jen, the young CIA agent, who was the only one that was 100% he was there, who was crying on the airplane, who loved wearing high heels in Washington. All these things that he described were things that we had filmed in our film.
Hi.
Hi.
So when you're talking about Zero Dark 30, I found it interesting how you found it tough to not be able to emote when playing that role. So I'm wondering about when you go back to Broadway and you play the same role every single day, day in, day out, and get this opportunity to, what kind of toll does that take on you?
Well, what I am learning now is that if they invite me back, I'm definitely coming back to Broadway. But I hope to only be doing that because it can't help, when I said playing Catherine, and especially in the second act when so much falls apart for her, I think it can't help but you feel like no matter how happy you wake up in the morning, at some point in the day, you have to have a breakdown and cry, and every day for 5 months. It can't help but take a toll on you, I think. Also, something I'm experiencing, which I've never worked in, Salome was in a very large theater, but my first film teacher, Al Pacino, who was my first director, said something that really struck a chord in me, acting on film, is he said, you need to accept that the camera is an extension of your soul. And more than your scene partner, the camera will see into you. Now, when you look at a close-up of a film, we can really see what the person is feeling. And once you accept that to be true, you can forget about it. But it has a direct connection to your soul. In a film, you just feel, you just are. And in theater, you have to show. So that's something to me that I find really interesting. The next time I do a play, I'm probably gonna want to do something in a smaller house. That I remember seeing a production of recently last year of Uncle Vanya with Mike Shannon. I saw it twice, and I actually took Isabelle Huppert to see it. It was in a room probably this size, and it was such an exciting moment of theater for me to be in the room with all of that. And I struggle with the idea of I want everyone in the house for the Heiress to see what's going on. But then that means I have to show. I can't just be in the moment. And that's something I'm still learning how to do.
Jessica, thanks so much for a great conversation.
Thank you.
It was a real pleasure.